Thunderous Smite, probably one of the most overlooked spells in the Paladin kit. It costs your bonus action and slightly under its cousin, default Divine Smite, 2d6 Thunder versus 2d8 Radiant. And you cannot even upcast this. You're trading raw damage for tiny control. So on paper, it doesn't look that impressive. But let's see if we can turn it into our advantage. And in this video, we're building around Thunderous Smite and squeezing every bit of potential out. If you ever need a burst damage build backed up with a melee AoE and a bit of melee crowd control, this build might be your guy. Now let's push this thing to its absolute limit. Some BG3 creators already done something similar, so we're doing this my way. So we'll explore more of the utility side of Thunderous Smite. If you've seen my previous build, thunder damage, in my opinion, goes really well with Thunderbolt Strike to push enemies whenever we deal lightning or thunder damage. Thunderbolt Strike is a level 6 Tempest Cleric passive paired with the strong lineup of spells, and in my case, Spirit Guardians. There was a comment on one of my videos. Someone tried to utilize Thunderbolt Strike through Polar Master with lightning charges and the Charger Feat. It shouldn't work, but with my tweak, somehow it does by using the Sparky points for this build, giving us consistent lightning charges. You got no extra reach property, but it still gets the job done. I've seen people on Reddit complain about builds that rely on Act 3 items being a terrible idea. This one is available early in Act 1, so that's not an issue. Hypothetically, we cast Thunderous Smite, the enemy gets pushed by Thunderbolt Strike, then drops prone. On their turn, they try to approach, half movement from prone, Thunderbolt Strike kicks in, pushing them away. Slowed by Spirit Guardians, they are definitely having a hard time reaching us. And before we even get into Reverberation stacking into another prone, they might never touch us. But I still lean this build toward burst damage. Not a CC or AoE playstyle, but the Great Weapon Master -5 to hit is just too punishing in practice. And I really felt it while making this video. So if you got a sorcerer or any caster, back this up with Hold Person or Hold Monster whenever you need to take down certain big bats with bigger boom damage. Once you find a way to land a critical hit, trigger Destructive Wrath. You roll max damage, that spike becomes a straight up game changer. And there you have it, the build is complete. Credit to that comment for the idea. Thunderous Smite is our main course, Spirit Guardians add slow and AoE pressure, the Sparky points for the lightning charges, and Thunderbolt Strike ties them all up together. But enough small talk, let's get into the nitty-gritty. 5 levels of Paladin for extra attack, pick any oath you want, and Thunderous Smite, of course. I don't usually go deep in oaths for Paladin builds since they play pretty similarly, unless we're building around a specific subclass like my Oath of the Crown video. But if you ask me, I think Oath of Vengeance stands out for damage-based build. Vow of Enmity gives us a free advantage roll, and like I said, Great Weapon Master -5 to hit really hurt this build. So having an advantage roll feels like night and day. Or if you want more damage, Inquisitor's Might adds extra damage equal to your Charisma modifier. Pretty sweet, right? Just makes you to invest a decent amount of Charisma. And to the highlight of the day, Thunderous Smite, probably one of the least used spell in Paladin kit, but if your Paladin leans into tank and support, this becomes a solid disruption tool, forcing enemies to prone to break spellcasters' concentration or stopping them from roaming around free, even moving toward your party. On top of that, it has no concentration requirement. Oh boy, this is great. So your Paladin can still run a powerful spell like Hold Person, Hold Monster, and in this case, Spirit Guardians. Speaking of Spirit Guardians, let's move on to 6 levels of Tempest Cleric for Spirit Guardians and Thunderbolt Strike. It proc twice on your turn and on enemy's turn. But people overlook the utility, the crowd control, and that's what we're using it for, slowing enemies as they approach. Then when we're infused with lightning charges, pushing them away with Thunderbolt Strike. But how does that even work? Thunderbolt Strike, pushing enemies whenever we deal lightning or thunder damage. In my opinion, that alone is a game changer for melee crowd control. I've used this in my Tempest Monk build, and like my recent build, turn an archer into a close corner combatant. And in this this case, it all comes back to that spear, the sparky points. Thanks, Papalarian. That's it for Tempest Cleric, but hold on, the build is not complete yet. We're taking a small detour into Sorcerer Dip, specifically Storm Sorcery. Not only it fits the theme perfectly, but what we really want is Booming Blade and the free flight. But how much does this Sorcerer Dip impact the whole build really? Booming Blade, we know it adds extra damage when enemies move. Now pair that with Thunderbolt Strike. Once we push them away, they are definitely going to come back to us. And we cast it with our extra attack. We weave in Booming Blade to add that extra damage when enemies move. Told you, we're pushing Thunderous Smite to its absolute potential. With this build, your attacks might hit, might not. So you fall back to the classic Spirit Guardians AoE. Tempest Just Flight lets us move freely across the field, sweeping through enemies and tagging almost the entire map in a single round. On top of that, whenever I think about Wizard and Sorcerer, Shield Spell is the first thing that comes to mind. Don't get hit in the first place, that is the priority, perfect for this build, especially when we wanna keep our concentration up as long as possible. Oh, and also, speaking of concentration, starting your level as Sorcerer gives you con save proficiency, which is huge for holding Spirit Guardians. But that also locks us in medium armor, or you can stick with your Paladin levels from early. We stay a traditional martial, extra attack and bunking anything in front of us. Bonus action doesn't have much going on that stage, so Thunderous Smite actually gets a solid value early. Then at level 6, we take the Sorcerer Dip, mainly for Booming Blade. Then continue with Cleric levels, stacking spell slots until we hit Thunderbolt Strike and Spirit Guardians. Or if you wanna lean into AoE damage, you can go 6 Tempest Cleric and take Paladin second. This shifts the build towards Spirit Guardians. Each round you are casting Thunderous Smite while moving through enemies, letting Spirit Guardians tick non-stop. And since the Sparky Points is already available early in Act 1, now it just comes down which progression and playstyle you prefer. For ability scores, first Charisma at 16 for Inquisitor Smite and our main spellcasting modifier. Then there's a bit of a dilemma between Strength, Dexterity, and Constitution. You can drop Strength and rely on elixirs or just keep it at 16. Dexterity at 14 still feels very important because in this game, initiative is king. Constitution is where it gets risky. Going down to 12 is playable. You can back that up with Peerless Focus, but it is still fragile. You will feel it on your concentration. Personally, I'd still go back to using Giant Strength elixirs, keep 14 Dexterity for initiative, and 16 con, so I'm not taking any chances. For the feats, Great Weapon Master is still the best pick if you're talking about raw damage builds. And then take Warcaster or Alert, or increase your ability score. For armor, my obvious pick is Luminous Armor, radiating orb stacks on enemies, lowering their attack rolls, which means they are more likely to miss. And if they are not hitting you, your concentration stays up longer. But honestly, the priority is just stacking AC as high as possible. Grab the best medium armor you can find. If you're not starting as Sorcerer, then Cataric's Heavy Armor is a strong option, preventing prone, which would otherwise shut down your concentration immediately. For the weapon, from early game all the way to end game, we stick with the Sparky Points, Gloves and Boots. The best combo is the Reverberation Duo. Build up 5 stacks of Reverberation debuff and enemies drop prone, great for slowing them down, and it procs off Radiant, Lightning, or Thunder damage, including Spirit Guardian's condition, which we have all of them in our attacks. Alternatively, if all the combos is already taken, you can swap to Mintara's Boots of Striding, then replace the gloves with Luminous Gloves as a substitute for Luminous Armor. Just mix and match between the two, this set or this one. Since your initiative might be lacking, just slot in any bow that boosts initiative. Head slot Diadem of Arcane Synergy, adding Charisma modifier to your damage. Ring of Absolute Force for extra thunder damage. Then Ring of Elemental Infusion and Necklace of Elemental Augmentation for even more big PP damage. Any race works just fine with this build. Shadowheart fits naturally with the Cleric side of it. Astarion and Mintara also slide in nicely if you wanna lean more into the Vengeance angle. It just matches the vibe. I gotta say, compared to a normal /OG Divine Smite build, this still falls behind. I'm sorry, but that's just the reality. Thunderous Smite leans into more control by nature, not raw damage, so I wouldn't even compare this eye to eye. But this definitely feels better than when I tried building around something like Searing Smite. I still don't know why Watsy or Larian didn't buff or just adjust the power level between the smites. Next, you're not getting much to boost your attack rolls, and I really felt that while making this build. Misses happen more than you'd like, so if you've got a sorcerer or any caster, back this up with Hold Monster or Hold Person. Even better if your support is Mintara, Soul Branding grants an extra 2d4 fire damage and movement speed, even bigger PP damage, and hit the whole map with Spirit Guardians. Next, there's the action economy problem. You're always choosing between setting up Spirit Guardians first or going straight in with Thunderous Smite and start bunking your way through. Maybe I would do that in smaller skirmishes. And ultimately, this is a great melee disruptor, not as clean and reliable as a full caster, but it trades that for presence. You're in the front, bonking everyone whoever in your way, dealing solid damage while constantly messing with enemy movement. It is for players who want crowd control without giving up the frontliner weapon slinging playstyle. Thank you for reaching this far. I hope this worth your while. That's all I've got. I'll see you next time.